Comrade Carl, it's always great having you over at our studio once again. I'm really looking forward to this interview today. But before we go into politics, I just want to find out, how are you doing? How was your holiday? Hoe was die vakansie? Het jy gebraai? How was it?
Thank you, first of all, for having me.
Yes.
I thought the last time when I was here, I spoke for too long. I spoke for 3 hours.
Yes.
So you had to do a lot of work and a lot of editing on that long interview. I thought, I won't be seen in that studio again.
Yeah, it was a
so
long one.
it is a pleasure for me to be back. I had a good holiday.
Yes.
I spent my time here in Cape Town. And I spent the time with my wife, Noluthando, and with my 7-year-old son,
Yes.
Nkanyezi. And it was important to have quality time with them because,
Yes.
politics is not kind to families.
I can
It's
imagine.
very demanding. The demands on your time are unpredictable. One moment you think you're going to be tonight at home, and then suddenly a phone call comes in and you have to get onto a plane.
Yes,
So I
yes.
enjoyed the touristy side
Yes.
of Cape Town, which I don't usually experience because in Cape Town, it is Parliament and I'm a member of Parliament, so it is work for me.
Yes, yes.
So we enjoyed going to the waterfront, we enjoyed
Yes.
going to the beach, we went on the big wheel.
Oh, nice.
I've got the most lovely pictures of
pictures.
myself with the young man enjoying himself, and all of that are great memories. And I feel that my batteries
Yes.
are recharged.
that's
But I
great.
also heard that you had a great holiday.
Yes, no, I had a great one. We were at the Klein Karoo with my wife and kids. They really enjoyed the experience. Oudtshoorn was good. We saw the Congo caves, went there, the stalagmites and titas. We did quite a whole lot of braaiing as well. And in the Karoo, they braai with wood instead of coal.
And it's the best
Afrikaner
way
braai.
of braaiing
Yes.
with wood, hey?
Yes.
And I've got such beautiful memories of the Klein Karoo,
Yes, yes.
also of Oudtshoorn, also going to the Congo caves and,
Yes.
and also the ostrich farms.
Yeah, the ostrich
You
farms
know,
as
it was
well.
one of the favorite things that my parents did was to take us to the Klein Karoo.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I enjoy going there. I enjoy a road trip into
that's
the Klein
great.
Karoo, just going, not having any very rigid plans, driving, going from one small town to
Yes.
the other, on the spur of the moment, deciding on which guest house you're going to stay. And when you ride through and you get to Graafrenet,
Yes.
that beautiful town,
Yeah.
and I used to stay
Eastern
at a hotel stroke guest house there, which is called the Landros.
The Landros.
Now, that was the magistrate's court
Okay.
of Graafrenet before it was changed and turned into a hotel. So I used to stay there, and I always appreciate the people of the
people.
Klein Karoo because those are some of the most real people
that you
that
can
you
get.
can find in South Africa. And I also did a fair amount of my own braaiing.
Is it?
I spent my time staying at my little house, because the houses that we have in
the
the
parliamentary
parliamentary village, it's not
Yes.
big.
Yeah.
I spent my time there. We braaied there.
Yes,
we
yes.
enjoyed ourselves, and then we made our various trips around the Cape Peninsula to enjoy the
Yes.
holiday. So I'm back here. I am re-energized.
Yes.
I'm ready for what I believe is going to be a very challenging
Yeah.
political year. And from my perspective, as a member of the Economic Freedom Fighters, I'm very excited because we just came at the end of last year in December out of
The elective
the
conference.
National People's Assembly,
Yes.
which is an elective conference where we had a great reaffirmation of the ideals
Yes.
of the EFF, where we had fantastic discussions, policy discussions.
Yes.
And I believe that the EFF has gone through a process of rejuvenation, of renewal. It is ready to take on the new challenges. Yes, we've shed some of the dead wood. Some
has
of those who, for opportunistic reasons, decided to leave the economic freedom fighters,
Yes.
who were no longer showing themselves to be ideologically as sound and as strong as they used to say that they are. Also, some of those who claim that they were the creators of the economic freedom fighters, denying the fact that the EFF grew out of the people and that the EFF had a very rich history of how it came about through Marikana, the meeting at Uncle Tom's in Soweto, and everything else that went through with it. So, yes, sometimes it's good to get rid of those who are not in heart and mind
of the party
with you, and to go ahead with the real fighters, the real commissars, the people who are truly committed to the revolution. And if you look at the resolutions that came out of the National People's Assembly and the way in which the EFF has also been active since that conference, since the conference, the way in which we are rebuilding our structures, what we have been doing in the opening of this year with the return to school readiness program, the many oversight visits that we did, and the hard work that is being done in those provinces where we do have challenges, where we have lost some support, such as in KwaZulu-Natal. I was very impressed with the leadership and the fighters of the EFF in KZN for the way in which they took up the back-to-school program and assessment of the readiness of schools to serve our children. It was throughout the province. The EFF members who were at the gates, engaging with the Department of Education, making sure that learners are allowed into the schools and dealing with the problems of parents. Very impressive.
Well, that's great. That's great, Comrade Carl. Let's talk about the leaders that have left the economic freedom fighters. Your former Deputy President, Floyd Shivambo, is now the Secretary General of Umkhonto weSizwe. Your former comrade and friend, Advocate Mkhwebane, she is now the convener of Umkhonto weSizwe in Mpumalanga, not to mention Ujimmy Manye, who has also left and now is the official chief whip of the opposition, which is Umkhonto weSizwe. I want to ask you, Comrade Carl, were there any attempts from Umkhonto weSizwe members and also Ubaba as well, President Jacob Zuma, in recruiting you as well to Umkhonto weSizwe? And were there those attempts in that specific period?
Look, I have expressed my views about those who left.
Okay.
And I denounced them and I called them opportunists. I used strong words such as traitors. Wow. I don't want to go into the detail of that again because I believe at some point one moves on. You don't get stuck and you don't get derailed by those who are traitors. You move above them. You move over them and go on. So I'm not going to talk about them. They have exposed themselves. They've shown themselves for who they are. And, well, I wish them luck in the MK party. I believe that party is going to show them flames because it is not a party with a strong ideology. In fact, as you and I sit here, I've got serious difficulties to even know what the real ideology of the MK party is. Full of contradictions, sometimes reactionary, sometimes sounding progressive, other times making male chauvinist, misogynist statements such as Jacob Zuma did on young women who fall pregnant, that they should be locked up at Robben Island. You know, astonishing things. You never know exactly where this party is going. It is like a lucky packet. Surprises come out all the time.
All the time.
And those surprises come out because there's no ideology. Just listen to the last week. The MK party issues a statement welcoming the presidency of Donald Trump. Wow. The MK party doesn't speak about what Donald Trump is doing in Palestine and in the occupied areas of Palestine, where he's given carte blanche to the illegal settlers. In fact, he took away any sanction against them, the illegal apartheid Israel Jewish settlers on Palestinian land. Nothing, but it issues a long statement welcoming Donald Trump to the presidency of the United States of America. Yes, to answer your question, there have been attempts by people who came to me and said, you should join the MK party. I don't know, some of these...
In that period.
Some of these guys will approach me and say, you must come home. And I look at them and I say, but what home are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because I've never been a member of the MK party. And if they confuse Umkhonto we Sizwe, the military wing of the African National Congress, with MK party, they are seriously, ideologically derailed and confused. Because Umkhonto we Sizwe, the military wing of the African National Congress, which was formed on the 16th of December 1961, and which I joined at the age of 19 in 1979, is not Umkhonto we Sizwe party. And I've explained that at length. But sometimes it seems that the penny just doesn't drop for some people. I've explained that Umkhonto we Sizwe, the armed wing of the African National Congress, went through a process in 1991, first of the suspension of the armed struggle. I wasn't in agreement with that decision, but it was a majority decision of the ANC's NEC and also of the first legal national conference that the ANC held in 1991 at Durban Westwood after the ANC was unbanned. And then in 1993, finally the armed struggle was totally wounded up. The Umkhonto we Sizwe was disbanded again by a decision of the National Executive Committee of the ANC as part of the negotiations, as part of the adoption of the interim constitution, and as part of the process to get to the elections on the 27th of April 1994. And during that whole process, the suspension of the armed struggle, the disbanding of Umkhonto we Sizwe, one of the people who was central to that process, who fully agreed with the majority decisions of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, was Jacob Zuma.
President Zuma.
So there's a fundamental, strange contradiction here. He agreed with the disbanding of Umkhonto we Sizwe, but today a fake impression is being created that the MK party is a continuation of Umkhonto we Sizwe. It can't be. What we have seen is an abuse of the logo, a little bit adjusted, but an abuse of the logo and an abuse of a historical period where people have a great warmth and affinity for it. A historical period in the history of the liberation struggle. And now it is filled with all these funny, contradictory ideological positions that the MK party has, and also the sycophancy that we see in the MK party, the kind of worshipping of one individual, Jacob Zuma.
So you think it's a dynasty party?
Well, I've called it, and some of the MK party people got quite angry with me, but it's true. I will repeat it again. I called it the Nkandla family enterprise. It is a family promotion. It is not, in essence, a political party. So I was clear right from the beginning. When I heard, and President Zuma told me personally, he told me in, I think it was late September 2023, that he is now forming the MK party. And I knew that Jabulani Khumalo went and registered the MK party. And I was a little bit later in October 2023 at his house. And we had a discussion together with other progressive political party leaders. At least we called them progressive there. There were also people like Bantu Olumisa and others who've now joined the farcical government of national unity. So I don't know how progressive we can describe them anymore.
That you also might join if the DA leaves.
Well, that will then be a different government. When the DA is gone, the economic freedom fighters has never said that we in principle against entering into a coalition given what the outcome of the elections last year on the 29th of May was. But let me just conclude what I was saying. So I was clear, unequivocally so, right from the beginning, that I was not going to join the MK party. And I told Jacob Zuma that in person. I said to him, I disagree with the formation of another party because I believe it is important that we should create unity. We must bring down the number of so-called progressive parties. And I believe there is a party with a strong ideology, with a well-established footprint in South Africa, a strong organizational base, and that's the economic freedom fighters. And I put my money where my mouth was. Because once I made that decision, I then went back to my own little party, the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance, spoke to our executive and said to them we should join the EFF. And as individuals, we did agree to join the EFF. So before we made that announcement, and that happened in 2023 on the 14th of December, a couple of days before the announcement of the formation of MK Party by Jacob Zuma. Because he announced the formation of MK Party on the 16th of December 2023, again trying to abuse the history of Umkhonto weSizwe because he wanted to utilize that very seminal historical date in our history, the 16th of December. So there can't be any confusion. There's no need for us to fight about it. I made up my mind long ago. And anyone who came to me had not listened to me because I explained it to them over and over. I think in my previous interview with you, I also spoke about it. So perhaps we shouldn't get stuck there because there's so much that needs to be done. There's so much positive challenges that we have in South Africa that we need to work for proper land restitution, not this fake restitution bill that is now been piloted by the government of national unity. So I'd prefer to talk about all of those issues, but it's always important to clear the air. And in the process of clearing the air, let me say, I've been honest and clear to Jacob Zuma why I would never join the MK party. I've repeated myself to the point of repetition that is probably unnecessary on social media, why I won't do so. And I think it has actually reached the time where all of those guys on social media, some of them paid bots, because I hear MK Party pays people to go onto X and onto Facebook. I think I must just ignore them, and if they're irritating enough, I think I should just block them. Because there's a time that we need to talk about the constructive, progressive agenda of the economic freedom fighters.
But don't you feel like you are in a very, very difficult position? Because now in order to demonstrate your devotion and loyalty, it's almost like you have to criticize your former allies. Don't you think like you caught between a rock and a hard place? Because you were very close to President Jacob Zuma. You were a strong ally. So don't you feel like you are in a bit of a tricky situation in this?
No, I don't think so. I don't need to prove myself. And I don't do it in order to prove myself because I've stated my case. I do it because it's such a matter of principle for me. And because some of the things that the MK party does is so unprincipled and so irritating. So that's why I respond, not to prove myself. I have nothing that I need to prove beyond who I am. My history speaks for itself.
Yes.
My liberation struggle commitment and the sacrifices that I've made speaks for itself. I don't need to prove myself to anyone, especially not to some of the young kids that are around and don't even sometimes know the history of the liberation struggle. Also, I don't need to deny the history that I've had with Jacob Zuma.
Yes.
I'm not shy of saying that I supported Jacob Zuma when the law was weaponized against him by the African National Congress because of the factional infighting in the ANC.
Yes.
And again, it was for me a principled matter. It was not about the individual, Jacob Zuma. It was about the principled matter that it is wrong to weaponize the law in order to try and take an opponent out. And Thabo Mbeki did that, Saki Mukuzoma did that, Bulelani Nguka did that.
Yes.
And I opposed it.
Using state resources.
And I stood with Jacob Zuma on the basis of that wrong that was being done to him. But at the same time, I acknowledge that when I was in prison, and I've spoken, I think, in this studio about it, but definitely in other podcasts. When I was in prison, I was one of the last prisoners
Yes.
who was released. And I wasn't released like many of the other political prisoners because the white apartheid regime
Yes.
had a special hatred for me. The then Minister of Justice and of Correctional Services, Kobie Coetzee, openly said, I will not allow that Afrikaner traitor to be released from prison, despite the fact that there were agreements between the ANC and the National Party that all political prisoners should be released in order to commence the formal phase of negotiations.
That's 1990.
So during that period, the lead negotiator who had been sent by the ANC into the country was Jacob Zuma. He visited me.
Okay.
He pushed for my release. I've acknowledged that many times before. I'm grateful that he did so. And I will always acknowledge that he contributed to my release. Of course, on the other hand, one also has to acknowledge that he did so because it was his job to do so. He was sent to be the chief negotiator. He was sent to implement the various agreements, including the Grote Skuur agreement, which also covered the release of political prisoners. So he did his job, but I'm grateful to him that he committed that I should come out of prison. But that can never mean that I now must, into eternity, not have the right to have my own views and to express them. And when I feel that I disagree with a person, including him, that I can then express my views and say that I disagree. So certainly I cannot be held like almost prisoner.
Yes.
Now and attached into some kind of straitjacket of always being loyal in every regard
head nodder as well
to Jacob Zuma because of what he did and contributed for my release. It can't be that when someone finds you in the desert and that person brings you a bottle of water, and it is in the beginning of the year that that person gives you that water. So it's a great relief. It helps you to survive. But along the road during that year, there are issues that happen. That person does things that you disagree with fundamentally. Surely it can't be that for the rest of that year and for the rest of your life, you are constantly reminded, well, I give you a bottle of water, so you cannot have your own mind and your own faculty. That is disrespectful to me. And surely a person like Jacob Zuma shouldn't expect that from me. He should expect from me to be a man of my own mind, speaking my own mind. The one challenge, and I think I've passed that challenge. I think I have complied with that.
What's
the one
the
challenge was, am I honest with him?
And
Do I go to him and tell him directly in person, I'm not going to go with you on this because these are my reasons? That I don't go, behind his back in a dark little corner and, say the things that I don't agree with him. And I did pass that challenge because I did speak to him in person. I explained to him in detail why I will not join him. And if there's one person today in the MK party, if you go to him who will tell you, if he's honest, that he understands why I'm not there, because I took the trouble to explain it to him in great detail, it is Jacob Zuma.
Because you spoke to him in confidence.
Yes, in confidence.
And the last time you've met with him in person was the meeting that was in 2023?
It was that meeting. Unfortunately, I wanted to bring the executive of Hareta, all of them 2 weeks later after that meeting, to come to Nkandla to meet with him, to explain to him why we've taken the decision that we had taken. But when I arrived there, and he seems to have taken offense to my straightforwardness 2 weeks earlier. Okay. And when we arrived at the gates of Nkandla, he refused to see us. So,
were you also hoping maybe for an endorsement for Hareta from him at that specific time?
Why would I wanted an endorsement at that time? Because I had disbanded Hareta.
Because
I got rid of Hareta. We all agreed that we will join as individuals the economic freedom fighters.
Yes.
And I must say I was disappointed by the way that Jacob Zuma handled that. The fact that he gave me a cold shoulder, that he didn't open the gates of Nkandla for us as a group of people who came there to come and explain to him why we've taken this decision. I thought it was a bit unfortunate and something I would have expected not to be done by someone of his stature, of his age, and hopefully of his mental and political maturity. But unfortunately, he did that.
Comrade Carl, I'd like you to take you back. There was, when you were the spokesperson, right, of Umkhonto weSizwe, military veterans, there was a verification test that was conducted by General Enoch Mashaule. And obviously you went down to the Eastern Cape.
Yeah, to East London.
And you did the test, and his response that you didn't pass the test. So what happened in that one?
Look, you can only laugh at this because it indicates to you the way in which everything in government. And everything also concerning military veterans got muddled up by the factionalism in the African National Congress. Because for retired Major General Motshekga to say to me that I'm not a member of Umkhonto weSizwe, with my history, with the well-established record that there is of me joining the MK, of the well-established legal record that there is. Because remember, I was charged. And I appeared in court in 1983 in a lengthy trial. The court record, what I was found guilty of, says I'm found guilty of being a member of the ANC, I'm found guilty of having been a member of Umkhonto weSizwe, and it goes beyond that. You found guilty of having planted these bombs at these places. You found guilty of having smuggled weapons and established arms caches in the country. And so on and so forth. So for Motshekga then, at the end of all of that,
Yeah.
to come. And I remember during that interview,
Yes.
I'll call it an interview,
Yes.
but it wasn't an interview. It was
Was
a
it a
farcical
panel
shouting
discussion?
match. Yeah, it was a panel.
Yes.
The only one who was really speaking was him. He was screaming and shouting from the moment I came through the door and sat down at the table.
Yes.
And of course, I think you know me well enough by now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take that lying down.
And then you went for
So
it.
I gave it to him as good as he gave it to me. And at the end of it, I definitely came out the better. And then after all the shouting, after all the allegations that he is not able to recognize me as a member of Umkhonto we Sizwe, as a soldier of Umkhonto we Sizwe, when I left, he signed the form.
He signed the form.
He signed the form. He signed the document saying that I am accepted as a member of Umkhonto we Sizwe and that I must be included on the database as a member of Umkhonto, because he couldn't do anything else.
Yes.
Then after that, he went to a journalist at the Citizen. And he said, no, he didn't pass. But I decided still to sign the form. Now, can you imagine? Can you imagine now this nonsense? And then the Citizen, of course, this was someone who he knew, who was prepared to do propaganda for him, wrote a big story, that Carl Niehaus didn't muster the test, that he's a member of Umkhonto we Sizwe. All poppycock. There are so many people who know my contribution in the armed struggle. There are so many people who can vouch for that.
Yeah.
And as you know, I have been in the period since the MKMVA association had been formed.
Yes.
I was there as a member of Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association on the basis of my previous membership of Umkhonto we Sizwe. Because Umkhonto we Sizwe Military Veterans Association was an association meant to represent the former soldiers and freedom fighters of Umkhonto we Sizwe, to fight for those military veterans so that their rights and their privileges
that was the
can
main
be
purpose
acknowledged.
of creating.
The purpose was not to reinstate MK. Never. MK was disbanded.
So it was a
The last parade of Umkhonto we Sizwe took place on the 16th of December 1993 at the Orlando Stadium.
I see the picture with Joe Modise.
Yes, I was standing right behind Joe Modise in my MK camouflage, everything. So all the evidence is there, but yet General Mshwele wanted to kick up a fuss. But now, there's something like karma.
Yes.
And there's something like poetic justice. At the moment, we, and when I say we, I mean the Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans, of which I'm now a member because I'm a member of Parliament. And I represent the economic freedom fighters as the permanent representative of the EFF on that Portfolio Committee.
Yes.
We have to deal with a crisis that there is, that the database for military veterans is in chaos. That there are large numbers of bona fide members of Umkhonto we Sizwe, of APLA, and of other liberation armies that do not appear on that database. There seem to be a small, selected, privileged, pre-selected group, clique. That's right. That's the right word. Who sit on the database and who are managing to get privileges because they're on the database.
Okay.
So now our Portfolio Committee has to deal with that issue because we have a critical oversight function in order to judge whether the Department of Military Veterans, like the Department of Defence, are functioning properly. Are doing their job. And the Department of Military Veterans are certainly not doing their job because they cannot provide the rights and privileges to the majority of military veterans because those military veterans have been on some funny basis, on the basis of some shenanigans, not included in the database.
In the database.
And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to get a full report on their database.
Yes.
And what I've asked, and I will insist on it happening, is a General Mushwaule
Yes.
must come and appear in front of our committee
In front of your
and
committee.
explain himself.
Yes, on the
And I've got a couple of choice questions
For him.
to
it's
answer.
payback time.
He never thought, no, I'm not even
Yeah.
interested in payback. I'm just interested in justice and honesty. He never fought when he behaved in the way that he behaved towards me and other fellow
Yes.
MK soldiers that he will ever have to account. But I'm going to make sure that he does account.
But let's talk about the database. How do veterans sign up to the database? What are the benefits that they get after signing up? Is it easily accessible, like on a link on a phone, so that they are
No, it's
able
difficult,
to sign up? And also after that, is it then the verification test after they've signed up in the database? What's the process of that? Because I'm sure, like I've got myself uncles that have served in Umkhonto SCs or maybe apply as well, but they're not taken care of. So yeah, it would be nice
they
to
are not
know.
on the database.
But yeah, so it
Many
would
of them probably aren't.
yeah, so
Because you have to go through the process of obviously applying to be on the database. You have to provide evidence that you've been part of your particular liberation army.
Yes.
In my case of Umkhonto Sizwe, it wasn't difficult for me to do so because I've worked with various people and I gave my references. But then the problem comes in that Mushwaule and his group in that committee will do an interview.
Okay.
That interview is very subjective.
How so?
It is a set of questions.
Yes.
Where were you? In which camp were you? Why didn't I see you there? I was there at that stage. I didn't see you. What were you doing in Botswana? I don't recall that we recruited people in Botswana. Or where were you in that camp in Angola?
Yeah.
Very subjective.
But yeah.
And it is on the basis of that subjectivity that people are then excluded. On top of that, it is a cumbersome management process. It is
Yes.
bureaucratic. People have to travel to the various areas
That they
where they must
conduct.
come and present themselves for the verification. And remember, many of them are now elderly people, and they don't have money. So for them to travel to those areas is a great difficulty. For them to follow up, once they've gone through this cumbersome process, to follow up, to find out, am I now actually on the database? Can I claim those 11 rights and privileges that are provided for in the Military Veterans Act
Yes.
of 2011, number 18? Can I get them? They need to go through the bureaucracy of the Department of Military Veterans.
Yeah.
And I want to challenge you to, I'll
Yes.
give you the phone number. I've done that experiment several times.
Yes.
Phone the call center of DMV and hope to get an answer. You will phone on a mobile phone with your little bit of mobile
airtime?
data that you bought.
Is it a toll-free number?
Not even. And you'll sit and wait and wait and
Yes.
wait until all your airtime is gone.
It's gone.
And you will get no answer. If you're lucky enough
Yes.
that someone picks up on the other side, they'll say to you, we have to look at what is going on. We don't know. We'll come back to you.
Yes.
You never get a call back. Because in this day and age, after all these years that we've been calling for an electronic database,
Yes.
the database is still paper-based.
Still a manual
I will take you
paper-based.
with me to the Department of Military Veterans, to the offices
Yes.
of those officials who deal with the database. And you will understand immediately when you walk in there
Yes.
the chaos that reigns. Piles of paper,
Piles of papers.
requests from the various provincial offices having been faxed in. They don't get sent by email, they get faxed.
They get faxed.
Now, those piles of faxes get put all over the office.
All over the pile.
Some of them obviously find their way into this paper-based database. Others fall by the wayside. Now, we can be glib about it, but we shouldn't. Because every one of those names that don't get onto the database that are deserving of being on the database is a human being. A human being who've sacrificed his or her life for our liberation struggle, who was prepared as a soldier to die for our liberation.
Yes.
Every one of those names have got dependents, family members, who in terms of the Military Veterans Act of 2011 should be entitled to support for their education.
Yes.
Should be entitled to medical care, housing, transport, and many other things. And it doesn't happen. So you have the tragedy that in this country of ours, where these veterans have sacrificed their lives, you find military veterans totally unemployed. In fact, on the street, they don't even have a house. You find some of our fellow comrades, our fellow liberation soldiers under bridges, sleeping like paupers. And the Department of Military Veterans doesn't do its job. And the key to them being able to access those rights that they have in terms of the Military Veterans Act is the database. So to meddle with the database, to make that database your personal fiefdom, as General Mshwale had done, to use it as a tool of excluding some people because you factionally disagree with whatever political position they take, is criminal. It is counter-revolutionary. And he must face up to the consequences of his actions. And that is exactly what I intend to do when he appears in front of our committee. But beyond that, we must get this thing right. We must make sure that the database will become an electronic database.
Yeah, it needs to be digitalized.
It must be digitized and it must have an objective set of criteria which cannot be subjectively interpreted by some human being who wants to impose his particular faction on the politics of the day. And that is what we need to ensure that it should happen. But on top of that, we then must get the administration of the Department of Military Veterans right. It's chaos. At the moment, we have in the Department of Military Veterans a Deputy Director General. Who doesn't have matric.
The Deputy Director.
And I'm sorry, I'm saying Deputy Director General, the Director General.
The Director
Acting.
General.
Sorry, I wanted to use the word acting.
Oh, the Acting Director General.
Miss Mafu.
And she
doesn't have matric. Well, I believe she was out in exile. I believe she was a member of Mkhonto Sizwe, but that's not the point. There's some objective criteria
that
for the kind of job that especially someone in a senior administration post has to have. And I raised the question, I asked her in one of the portfolio committee meetings, just tell us simply, yes or no, do you have matric? We were all over the show. We couldn't get an answer. Then sadly, in the usual way that the ANC operates, the then acting chair of the portfolio committee
Malusi, right?
No. Malusi is the chair of the Joint Standing Committee.
Yes.
This was the acting chair of the portfolio committee on defense and military veterans, a member of the ANC.
Yes.
She started shouting and screaming and saying, I'm not allowing you to ask that question. I said, but the question is relevant. No, you don't ask that question. We're not allowing this here. And then afterwards, the same acting director general, Ms. Mafu, went to the media
Yeah.
and attacked me for having asked the question.
Does she have a matric or not?
Yeah. No, it's not even so much.
Yeah.
Yes, she must qualify. Qualifications, if they are there as part of the criteria, must be adhered to. But it's about your ability.
Yes.
Why did I ask her that question in the first place? Because she's incompetent. She presides over a department that's dysfunctional. I've just given you a description of the backbone of that department, which is the database for military veterans and the chaos, that reigns in all of that. There's a lot of unaccounted for money.
Yes.
There's a lot of material concerns that the Auditor General, material irregularities that the Auditor General pointed out in the last audit.
Yes.
So I must ask her the question, but Acting DG, are you competent? How is it that the minister appoints you? Why are we sitting in this chaos? Because it's my belief that at the moment the DMV, Department of Military Veterans, is the most dysfunctional department of all government departments, and there are many of them that are terrible. But this one is the worst.
Takes the crown.
And I've called many times in speeches in the National Assembly that the Department of Military Veterans must be placed under administration. It's critical. Money is disappearing. People's lives are being destroyed.
And look,
half the top senior staff of the Department of Military Veterans are acting Director General, acting Chief Financial Officer, acting this, acting that. I said in one of the committees, I think I'm in Hollywood.
Yes.
Because everyone is acting here. But that is the sad situation.
Yes, yes.
And it's another one of those duties and tasks that I have, and hopefully all conscientious members of Parliament who are on that portfolio committee, that we need to take the necessary action in order to pull this Department of Military Veterans together and get it right. Because as you say, you've got family members who suffer because of that administrative disaster and chaos. Yes. And we must get it right because, there's an old saying that says that a country's moral backbone is defined by how it treats its veterans. And if we judge South Africa by that standard, we fail dismally.
Let's talk about in the Eastern Congo. Right? What's happening there? The M23 rebels are really obliterating our soldiers. What's really happening there, Mr. Niehaus?
The sad thing is that the South African National Defence Force is totally mismanaged. The problem of what is happening in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, at GOMA, Sake, has got to do first and foremost with what is happening here at home, where the SANDF is dysfunctional. The SANDF has got serious financial problems. Yes, there had been budgetary cuts that implicated seriously on its ability to maintain prime mission military equipment. But it is not only that. It is also mismanagement, and it is also a dislocation of the top command structure from the rest of the troops of the forces of SANDF. The top command structure, the chief of the Defence Force, the chief of the Army, of the medical services, of the Air Force, have become a very arrogant elite. They've become fat cats. Now, I'll give you an example. One of the commanding officers, one of the generals, during the time of load shedding, took the generator of the military camp, the base.
The base.
Where he was in charge. Loaded it on the back of a truck and took it to his house in Waterkloof.
My word.
Connected it to that house, so he had 24/7 more
Electricity.
than enough electricity. Well, a national key point, a military base,
Yes.
whenever there was load shedding, was now shredded in darkness. And that is the kind of elite that you have at the top. People
Yes.
who take care of themselves. One of the soldiers said to me, the pain that I have is even some of my fellow comrades who previously were part of the liberation struggle armies of Mkhonto, Sizwe, Apla, etc.
So,
When they're in the defense force and they start accumulating
the rankings,
the rankings on the shoulders,
positions.
the more they have on the shoulder, the less morality they get, the less humanity is left in them, and the less they care about us. Sad.
Sad, eh?
When you go to the military bases like Thabo Tshwane in Tshwane,
Okay.
a military base, one of the important places where our forces are housed also, you will want to cry. The conditions of the houses falling apart, not maintained.
Is it underfunded though, Mr. Niehaus?
Of course there's underfunding, but underfunding is not the whole story. Because I've seen other military bases.
Yes.
I went to the base in Denota, which deals specifically with our engineers,
Okay.
with those who build the bridges and all the military operations. Same problem of not enough funding, but an amazing commanding officer. And that commanding officer gives priority to the right things.
Yes.
And she managed, despite the fact that there is not enough funds, to keep that base in tip-top shape.
Yeah.
I went to the hall where the community of soldiers of that base would gather. She was together with those soldiers fixing that hall. They were rolling up their sleeves, doesn't matter what rank they were, painting the walls,
Yes.
laying a new floor with tiles, making sure that the place is in good shape.
Yes.
So I always say, I know when I arrive at a military base, from the moment that I arrive, when I go through the gate, I know whether this is a base where there is a leadership
Yeah.
or whether this is a base where there's a failure of leadership. Infant Battalion 21,
Yes.
just here outside Nasrec, is a disaster. You arrive at the gate, nothing is working. Even the way you are received
Yes.
by the soldiers tells you, there's no control, there's no discipline. The outside emblem of the base is peeling off.
Peeling off.
There's not been a layer of paint on the officers, even of the commanding officer. It looks terrible.
Yes.
Even the flag is in shreds.
My word.
Now, that commanding officer is failing. That military base, important as it is for Gauteng, is failing. But the other base that I referred to earlier, Denota, not getting more money,
Yes.
still coming out of the same budget,
Yes.
which is cut and which is not nearly enough of the SANDF. The moment I drove through those gates, I said, here I can see there's leadership. Because a fish rots from the head.
From the head.
When there's no leadership, it cascades through everything. And unfortunately, at the top leadership, the overall top leadership of the SANDF, there's failure.
Starting from
There
the
is
minister.
self-enrichment. There is a sense that we are above the rest of our troops. We don't care for them. And now I come back to your question about
In GOMA and Saki.
GOMA and Sake and the DRC. That's exactly why we had troops being sent there without the necessary gear. Some of those soldiers didn't even
supplies.
have boots.
My word.
The
Going into
uniforms were
combat.
not in good condition. The rations were not proper. The ammunition was not enough. There's no air coverage. Everything is wrong. But you send your soldiers there, you don't even have enough troop-carrying airplanes that can bring them in, and if there's an emergency, as we have in GOMA right now, take them out. So I have warned time after time during the period since I've become a member of parliament. I made many speeches in the National Assembly, and I speak almost in fact, not almost, I speak in every one of the meetings of the Portfolio Committee, raising my concern that the SANDF is collapsing, that there's mismanagement, that the way in which the finances of the SANDF are managed is wrong, and that there are no proper priorities. I raise it all the time. And I also said, sending these troops of ours to the DRC is to send them to the killing fields.
It's suicidal.
They will die there because they don't have the training, nor the equipment, nor the air cover to be able to protect them. And the president of the EFF, our CIC, Julius Malema, last year on the 15th of February 2024, at a press conference said, these soldiers are left without the necessary protection. There's no guarantee that this SANDF and its command structure can give that our soldiers will be safe. And he made a call. He said they must, as a matter of urgency, be recalled to South Africa because we're sending them there to be killed. And unfortunately, sadly, last year, during 2024, more than 10 of those soldiers died last year. Now we've had 9 that died. Many more were injured. Many more. In fact, I think we've got an underreporting of the numbers of people who have died and have been injured in this latest disaster that is playing itself out in GOMA. And now, you know, we are to hear that on Friday, in the midst of this raging battle with the M23 rebels, our soldiers at GOMA and at SACE ran out of ammunition. Now, can you imagine what that means? That means you become just a sitting duck. You can't even fight back. You must now ration the little bit of ammunition you have just to shoot here and there a few shots, just to give the impression that you're continuing to resist. And this is a tragedy. And it is a tragedy as you and I'm speaking right now. And I don't know when this interview will go out, but we are speaking now on the weekend just after the announcement that on the 23rd of January, 9 of our soldiers tragically lost their lives. As I came into this interview, I received messages. The M23 rebels are in the process of overrunning GOMA, that they've already taken over the airport. I was receiving videos from, I won't give my sources, but people who are in GOMA, showing M23 rebels walking with their arms down the streets of GOMA, actually accosting some civilians and even executing some of those civilians. Now, for starters, the SANDF doesn't have the troop-carrying planes. We don't have them in-house. Our planes are down, they are in shambles, they are in the repair shops, they can't take off. So I understand that there were some troop-carrying planes and cargo planes that were chartered to try and fly rations and ammunition to our troops in GOMA.
To your troops.
But as they were approaching, the airspace was closed. The airport was now overrun by the M23 rebels. So that cargo plane had to be diverted away to Lubumbashi.
Because they couldn't land
And
there.
now I ask myself, I don't yet have all the information, but I am deeply worried. I ask myself, what does that mean for those poor young men and women that we have sent so unthinkingly, so callously,
Unprepared.
so unprepared into that killing field? What are they going to do when they don't receive those rations? It is a terrible tragedy. And I was listening to an interview,
Yes.
watching it on my phone as I was coming with a driver to this interview. And the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Alvin Botha, was doing an interview with Newsroom Africa.
Yes.
And he said, no, we shouldn't worry. We are actually managing to rebuff the M23 rebels in GOMA. This is not a time of despair. He says it's a time of hope. And I look at this interview and I said, who's this clown? I'm receiving video footage of the M23 rebels overrunning GOMA. I'm receiving information how the cargo plane that was supposed to bring munition and rations to the soldiers had to be diverted. And he talks about a time of hope. This is a clown. But the reality is, again, back to leadership. We don't have the leadership in the SANDF, but we also at a political level in this so-called farcical government of national unity. We don't have leadership. And people like Alvin Botha and especially the Minister of Defense, Angie Motshekga, who is out of her depth. She doesn't know what is going on there. She lied 5 days ago on SABC national television in an interview saying everything is fine. Whatever is thrown at us, we will be able to take. She was telling the South African public that while this tragedy was already unfolding in GOMA and in Sake, you want to tell me that the whole minister didn't know that this was happening. So she's lying through her teeth right there on national television, giving misinformation. Then afterwards she gets onto a plane and she flies to the DRC. She doesn't do anything there that is of substance. In fact, she becomes part of the problem. She becomes an obstacle because now troops that were supposed to be deployed at Sake and GOMA, together with their fellow soldiers, to fight and to protect each other, get withdrawn to come and protect the minister.
I see.
The minister sits there from the 21st of January to the 25th of January.
25th. She was there for the whole week.
So she's there for all these days. During that time, remember on the 23rd, she's already there now. 9 of our soldiers dies. They get killed in that battle. There's no announcement for 2 days while she's there by the communications department of the South African National Defence Force. Not a word. They didn't tell us what's happened. They don't share that information with us as the public, nor with the families of those soldiers who died. We start getting, I and other people who've got an interest in what's going on in the DRC, start getting the news from news sources in the DRC.
In the DRC.
This is what's happened.
So there's
we start
underreporting.
asking questions. What is going on? Why don't we hear about what is happening at Sake and GOMA? What has happened? We hear that 9 of our soldiers have died and several more have been injured. Then the SANDF, late on Saturday evening,
Yes.
releases a statement. Short, curt statement, because they were now under pressure, because the news had come out.
was
But
already
up
coming
to
out.
this day, as you and I'm speaking, the minister still hasn't said a word.
My word.
I
So
don't
there
know if
hasn't
she's
been a
back from the DRC,
So there hasn't
if she's
been a
still
statement
there.
from her.
I don't know what she's doing. But what I do know, and I want to make this point because it's very critical,
Yes, yes.
she must go.
She must resign, you
She
say.
must resign, fall on her own sword and go, because she's incompetent, she's callous, she lied to the nation, she's not in charge of the ministry that she's been given. And if she doesn't resign, if she doesn't have the dignity and the presence of mind to understand
resign.
the circumstances and what this moment calls for, then President Ramaphosa must fire her, and he must fire her immediately. But he himself also has to come and account, because he, as the commander-in-chief of the SANDF, knowing what the situation is, we've told him several times, President, our troops are not taken care of. You're sending people there to be killed. The
Yes.
SANDF is collapsing. All the things I've said to you now. So he knows he cannot claim innocence and that he hasn't got the knowledge. So he must come in front of an emergency joint sitting of the National Assembly
Yes.
and the National Council of Provinces, in front of all the members of Parliament, account, and publicly through that process also account to the people of South Africa.
But Mr. Niehaus, isn't this a SADC mission? I don't understand. Why is it only us who are taking the lead in fighting the rebels? Where's Angola? Where's Namibia? You know, all the other countries that are joined in SADC. So that is the question. Are we protecting private interests there? What is the main mission?
This is a very, very valid question.
And
Malawi is involved,
Yes.
South Africa, and but a number of countries, bordering countries on the DRC, who's part of SADC, are not involved and they're not sending troops. Now, I listened to this clown, Alvin Boertes, the interview that I've just referred to. He was asked that question. He
Yes.
says, no, there are different people who do different things. Some are part of the negotiations. The president of Angola is the champion for the agreement that must be reached, the Nairobi agreement. He called him, he's the holder of the pen.
Okay.
But the soldiers are not there. And he also admitted that our SANDF soldiers are the one who has to hold the fort.
Wow.
But how do you hold the fort when you don't have the resources to do so? So I don't understand how this whole SADC mission has been put together. And please understand me, I'm not against Pan-Africanism. I'm fully for it.
Yes.
I'm for a silencing of the guns. I want to see peace. I would
Yes.
love the Nairobi agreement that the president of Angola has tried to negotiate to be successful. But you cannot go into a killing field without the resources that are required. And then there's the serious question that you're asking me.
Yes.
Why are we there? Are we there to keep the peace? Is it simply a United Nations peacekeeping mission? Because remember, there are two components to this. It's the UN peacekeeping mission and then the SADC mission. Or are we there to protect the financial business interests of the big mining companies who are there in the DRC mining rare earth minerals that are critical for the IT, for the computer,
Yes.
and the smartphone industry of the West and the United States of America? Are we protecting those mines? I'm asking a rhetorical question because I know the answer, yes, we are. And we are allowing the local population of the Democratic Republic of the Congo to be subjected to the most horrible labor conditions. I'm sure you have seen some of the footage of what it looks like in those cobalt mines.
The artisanal mining, it's
Those
crazy.
young people, sometimes 6-year-olds, busy chopping away at rocks of materials that are very dangerous, that have got radiation capacity, that can kill those young people when they breathe in the dust that is caused by that mining process, over and above the terrible work under the most horrible temperatures in the glaring sun, not being paid anything that is acceptable. So this is what we are defending. This is what our young people are laying their lives down for.
Yes.
When I look at those video footages and photos, my heart breaks, because I know that there are young people in South Africa. I spoke this morning to a family member of one of the soldiers who died on the 23rd. It's from Limpopo.
Yes.
I can't mention names now, because those names have not yet been made public, but I spoke to the family. And you want to cry, because you say, was it necessary to lose this young life? Was it necessary to allow this to happen? I even had to ask myself, what more could and should I have done to prevent this?
Yes.
Could I have shouted louder in the Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans? Should I have stood up and been even more in the face of the Minister of Defence and Military Veterans? Should I have challenged Cyril Ramaphosa even more than what I've done? And my answer was, you have to. And this year you have to do even more. And you have to fight harder. There's a meeting coming up in 2 days' time.
Yes.
Of the Portfolio Committee on Defence and Military Veterans. And I phoned the chairperson of that committee, who's Dakota Legute.
Okay.
And I said to him, I'm warning you, I'm not going to be an easy member in that committee on coming Wednesday. And whatever agenda you have of other issues you want to discuss, I'm going to demand that that agenda must be cleared and that we discuss this issue and get to the bottom of it. Because this is what the immediate moment demands from us. What the blood of those young soldiers that have been killed in that killing field of the DRC demands from us. What the families of those young soldiers who will never receive their children back at home demand from us.
But on Parliament, the Progressive Caucus, how does the future look?
Look, the Progressive Caucus had been set up with a particular purpose.
Yes.
And that was a purpose to do work where we agree with each other on issues that surface and get put on the agenda of Parliament. And I suppose we will continue to do that.
Isn't the relationship strained now?
Well, of course the relationship is strained. That's why I said but. The relationship is strained because of the improper conduct of the MK party. Because the MK party decided to go on a poaching campaign, to come and poach members of the economic freedom fighters. And that is an act of aggression.
But it was expected. You guys compete with the same...
No. But you see, I'm coming to that. It's good. It's right that you talk about competition.
Competition.
But when you work in an environment where you say, I want to work for unity, as I hear Jacob Zuma speaking and other members of the MK party, you're not going to go out of your way to deliberately take action that is intended, evidently so, to destroy that other political party that you say you want to work with. The poaching of members of the economic freedom fighters by the MK party was and continues to be an act of aggression. And it has to be identified as such, and it brings me back to the warning that I gave Jacob Zuma when he told me that he is forming this party, MK party. I said to him, I warn you, if you form this party The logic of politics and the logic of contestation will lead to conflict, will lead to the EFF and the MK party entering into contestation with each other. I said, is that the disaster that you want to create?
So you could see it's going to happen.
I told him it's going to happen. If you listen to my speech on the 14th of December 2023 at the Maslow Hotel in Johannesburg, when we disbanded the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance, and I said we're joining now the EFF.
The EFF.
I warn in that speech, we shouldn't create more parties. We must bring ourselves together. I said if we allow more parties to be created, we will fraction and destroy and cause fissure between what is generally known as the progressive left. So those were prophetic words, because that is exactly what has happened. So, yes, the progressive caucus is still there. But of course, out there in the world, in South Africa, in the contestation for local government elections, for by-elections, etc., we, as the MK party, and we, as the EFF, are competing. And that is the logic of the current situation. That is the poisoned chalice that Jacob Zuma handed us with the creation of the MK party. I told him then, Baba, don't do this. Join, and if you can't join, at least give your support to the economic freedom fighters.
The EFF.
Endorse the EFF, because the EFF is the best organized, most structured left progressive political party with a strong ideological base. And even now, after the elections where the MK party did relatively well and it's now the official opposition,
yes,
I can still tell you that the political party with the best organizational structures on the left, the strongest base, the best footprint, a clear ideology, is the economic freedom fighters. The MK party is in chaos. And it is only...
It's infancy, I guess.
And it's never going to get out of
they're
its
still in their foundational phase. Norming, forming.
And musical chairs of leadership, and today it's this leader, tomorrow it's that one. How many TGs did they have? How many SGs did they have? I don't know what's happening in Mpumalanga with Mary Padi and with Busisiwe Mkhwebane. Chaos. And I tell you, I don't believe that chaos will ever correct itself. The MK party will eventually collapse under its own contradictions and its own weight. But again, now we're back at the MK party, and I said to you, let's talk about all the other political issues. But I suppose it relates to this question that you asked me about the Progressive Caucus. So in Parliament, we will continue to work together when we can.
Yes.
But outside Parliament, we are opposing each other, we're fighting, we're nominating our own individual separate candidates for the various by-elections. And we, in the economic freedom fighters, are campaigning not to come second, but to win. So we will push to win. And with that comes contestation, of course.
Yes, yes. So I hear even the CIC said you are waiting for the Democratic Alliance to leave the government of national unity so that you can come in. What are the plans on that? You're just waiting for the government of national... Are you a government in waiting for you guys to join in the government of national unity and take up ministerial positions?
Look, I'm not going to get involved in ifs and buts and speculation.
Oh, that's what he said.
No, I'm going to respond to that. But you went and took a whole lot of other speculation on the
Yes.
back of that, and that's why I said I'm not going to get involved in that. If you look at what the position of the economic freedom fighters was after the elections on the 29th of May last year, and you look at what happened during that formation process where there were talks with many different, amongst many different political parties, and the EFF itself participated in some of those discussions. The EFF, through our Secretary General, Marshal Dlamini, released a letter which gave the conditions that the EFF would be prepared to participate in a coalition government. And those conditions were very clear. We will not participate with the Democratic Alliance and other white supremacist parties, also representative of white monopoly capitalism. But we're not opposed to finding a way to work with political parties, whether they historically have been part of the liberation struggle as the ANC, and I emphasize that specifically historically because I don't believe the ANC is any longer a national liberation movement, and other black progressive political parties.
Yes.
We will be prepared to consider a process of participating in such a coalition government. I suggest, I don't have that letter right now here with me, but I suggest you go back and acquaint yourself with that letter, because those conditions still stand.
They still stand, you say.
And that's one thing about the EFF. It's always consistent. It doesn't go from one point to the next, and when we state that we have these principles on which we are prepared to join a coalition government, those are the principles that are applicable. So, I heard and I agree with the Commander-in-Chief when he said, we will see what happens. We will see what happens with regards to whether the DA is going to continue in the government or so-called government of national unity. But if the circumstances change, if the configurations change, if the DA goes and the Freedom Front Plus and they fall out of the train, so to speak, and it looks as if there are many reasons why they can fall out of the train.
Especially now.
I see Sihle Zikalala and his minister fighting about the expropriation bill.
The Bella and
the Bella bill is a big problem, and so on and so forth. So, when that happens, we will return to that letter. We will return to those principles and conditions that we've stated. It's not a principle to refuse to be part of a coalition. But it is important to be ideologically clear that you won't be part of a coalition that is a sellout coalition. And that is why we've refused to participate in this grand coalition where the Democratic Alliance is calling the shots. But we're not in principle against coalition. Coalition can be very empowering, depending on how you manage that process. And the electorate of South Africa, on the 29th of May last year, gave us the possibility to have a progressive black majority government. Sadly, the ANC, the DA, the Freedom Front Plus pushed together a government which is not the only option that we had. We had a clear other option which would have delivered to us a majority, which could have included the EFF, it could have included or excluded MK Party.
MK.
I don't know what they will do. I can't
Because
speak for them.
numerically you have the numbers.
But even with the EFF and the ANC and some of the other progressive parties, the numbers are there. So why should the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF not say, you know, if the circumstances change, we're not opposed
Yes.
to participate in coalition government. We are opposed to this particular manifestation of a grand coalition because of what it will give us. And we've seen what it gives us. The DA is in charge. We've seen the way in which the Bella Bill has been watered down. We see how this government is not working for the majority of black African people. So it was the right decision for the EFF not to be part of that particular manifestation of coalition. But a different manifestation can eventually develop, and that manifestation could include the EFF. That's all I can say. But for now, that's not where my mind is. My mind is as a member of the National Assembly representing the EFF to be the best opposition possible to this sell-out government of national unity. And I hope you heard that is what I keep myself busy with, because today I spoke about where my particular set of duties have been given to me by the EFF as a member of the Portfolio Committee for Defence and Military Veterans, Standing Committee on Defence, and now more recently, towards the end of last year, I was also made an alternate member of the Portfolio Committee for Correctional Services.
Oh, for correctional. And you've got like quite a whole lot of experience in that.
Yeah,
Like,
well, you're correct to remember that over and above the fact that I'm an ex-prisoner. So I've got first-hand prison experience. I was, in the first administration 27 years ago, I was the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee for Correctional Services. And there's a very, very interesting story about how I left that position.
And you went to go become the ambassador.
Did I tell that story before?
Yeah, I think. No, you didn't.
No, I may have told it to you on the sidelines, but not during an interview. I was the chair of the Portfolio Committee on Correctional Services. And one of the critical issues that came in front of that committee was the issue of privatization of prisons.
Okay.
I was opposed to it. I said, there is no way that I will accept the privatization of prisons. You cannot commercialize an institution such as a prison, because then there must be profits made, and those profits will be extracted on inhuman conditions being created for inmates.
Okay.
So I stood in principle against it. But the ANC at that time was not in principle against it.
Okay, with the privatization.
The ANC, to my surprise, because I wanted the ANC to be against privatization, was pushing for it. Okay. So I was out of sync with my own party on that issue. And then one afternoon I came in my office and my PA said, there was a call from Gavin Watson of Bosasa.
Oh, Gavin Watson.
I said, oh, wow. Okay. He wants to have lunch with you. So I had lunch with Gavin. It was here in Cape Town. It was, I don't know if Bukhara restaurant is still here, but it was at Bukhara restaurant. And Gavin said to me, come on, Carl. Stop your nonsense about your opposition to privatization. We want to go into a coalition with G4 and, you know, if you allow this to go through and don't oppose it, I will make you a wealthy man.
Oh, okay. So there was something that he was going to give you in return.
Of course. It was clear what he intended.
Yes.
I can still be quite fiery now, but those days I was much younger. So I lost my temper.
You lost your temper, right?
And I jumped up and I slammed my chair down and I said, Gavin, go to hell. And I walked out of the restaurant. So a couple of days after that showdown with him, I get called by Comrade Ahmed Kathrada, who was at that stage the parliamentary advisor to President Mandela. He says, you're in trouble. I said, Uncle Kaffy, why? He said, no, Gavin was here. He met with with Madiba.
Yes.
He complained about you and what you are doing to stop the privatization of prisons. And Comrade Kaffie said to me, look, Comrade Carl, you must understand, the ANC is going to get a lot of money from Bosasa. We need this money to run the organization.
The funds.
Madiba will have to act against you.
My word.
I said, okay. He said, why don't you make a U-turn? Change your posture towards this issue of privatization. I said, Uncle Kaffie, I told Gavin to go to hell. I stand by that. So by implication, I actually told him also to go to hell. So a week later, I get a phone call from Niehaus, from President Mandela's office. President wants breakfast with you at his residence in Genadendal. I said, okay. But in the back of my head, I think, here it comes, because Uncle Kaffie warned me that this is coming. So I went to the breakfast. Madiba didn't discuss the issue of privatization. Just as we were into the breakfast, he said, he always called me my boy.
Yes.
He said, my boy, I've decided to send you to the Netherlands as ambassador.
Just like that.
He didn't ask me, do you want to go? He didn't say to me, do you want to go and discuss it with your wife and your family? It was just a deployment. It was an instruction.
An instruction.
So I had no other option. I had to accept it. I understood what was happening. I understood that I was being kicked sideways. I was gotten rid of out of that portfolio committee on correctional services. Now, Madiba was kind to me. He could have done it much worse. He could have just fired me. I mean, he was the president of the ANC. He could have told me, leave Parliament and that's it. But at least he made me an ambassador.
Like
so I suppose I'm grateful. I suppose I'm grateful that he at least didn't just kick me out.
Yes.
But here's the moral of the story. The problem that we are faced with today is still that a large part of the issues in correctional services also still rotates around this privatization issue.
Okay.
And outsourcing and tenders.
Most of it is
So
outsourced.
these things must be addressed. And there's a little bit of karma here, some justice, because I've been given the unique opportunity to come 27 years after I was kicked out of the portfolio committee to the Netherlands, okay? Not too bad, but I was kicked out. After I was kicked out, I've given the opportunity now by my party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, to return to that committee. And I'm given the opportunity 27 years after I was removed to return with still the same mission, to bring an end to the privatization of prisons in South Africa, to bring an end to outsourcing and an end to tenders. And I'm in the fortunate position that those are principled policy positions
that you had
that the Economic Freedom Fighters has had for a long time and on which I will be supported to the hilt. So
that's great.
The Minister of Correctional Services, who was in that first administration a member of my committee, now he's the minister, he's got something coming.
He's got something coming.
And because I am going to fight these issues to the hilt.
To the hilt. But last but not least, what do you think is going to happen to Comrade Dlozi, Fighter Dlozi? He's resigned from Parliament. And do you think he's going to leave the Economic Freedom Fighters? Are there any plans for him? Because obviously he was not even present even at your conference. So, what do you think about that?
I've got no view on it.
Is it?
Except to say to you what I said to... No. It's not being funny.
Yeah, no,
I'm under no...
I totally...
Under no obligation to have a view about it.
Yes, no, definitely.
And I'll say to you what I said to some of these trolls who come on X
On X.
and ask me, where is Ndlozi? I said,
word.
look, my friend, dude, I look like car tracker to you. If you want to find him, go and find him yourself. So let Ndlozi speak for himself. I've got no intention to speak for him.
Yes.
And I hold no further view on that issue.
But thank you very much, Comrade Carl. Bye-bye, Dankie. It's always a joy having you in the studio, and we learn a lot. Thank you very much, and all the best for this year. I know you've got a very busy schedule with your party and also with the portfolios in Parliament, but it's always great having you around. Thank you very much. Maybe you will come back around April or June.
Is that already an invitation?
Yes, no, definitely. I'll already book it on my calendar.
I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for the fairness with which you engage with me. I always enjoy our conversations, and I hope that it will be an ongoing conversation about the future of our country and the commitment that I've held throughout to see South Africa becoming a truly liberated country, where, as we say in the EFF, there will be economic freedom in our lifetime, because now we still don't have it. It is still a battle. It is that a luta continua that we always commit ourselves to, that we must continue with.
Thank you very much.
you.
Viva Mpakazita.
Thank you.